Think about that object you own, maybe the one with a story, something that just feels, well, more valuable as time goes on.
Yeah, that feeling.
Today, we're going deeper than just admiring that. We're diving into a company that's almost synonymous with that enduring quality and, let's face it, desire. Hermes.
Exactly. And we've got their 2024 annual report right here. It's our guide, really, packed with everything from the top execs' views to strategy, financials, sustainability stuff, the works.
It really is a peek behind the curtain, isn't it?
It is a rare one.
So our mission for this deep dive, let's get past the glossy surface and pull out the key stuff. How does Hermes actually work? What decisions are shaping where they're headed, especially now? And maybe, are there any surprises in this report?
Good plan. Where should we start? The big picture.
Yeah, let's start there, the overall view.
Okay. So, right up front, the chairman, Axel Dumas, he talks about a solid performance, even with all the economic and geopolitical uncertainty around.
Which is saying something these days.
It really is. But he quickly pivots. It's not just the numbers. He stresses the strength of the Hermes model and how agile their teams are. It sounds like they're very intentional about building resilience.
Not just reacting. And that Hermes model, it sounds like it's really built on those core values they always talk about. Quality, creativity, that famous savoir-faire.
Absolutely. It seems to be more than just, marketing speak. It's a whole philosophy. Creating things that last, that can be repaired, passed down.
In a world obsessed with fast fashion and trends,
Yeah.
that's a pretty bold stance.
It is. And it shapes everything. Their whole strategy seems geared towards that long-term view. They're deliberately choosing lasting value, maybe even over maximizing short-term profit sometimes.
Which affects what the materials they choose, how things are made, probably even the pricing structure.
Exactly. It all connects back to that idea of endurance.
Now, something I always find fascinating with Hermes is their annual theme. For 2024, it was the spirit of the Faubourg. Sounds lovely, but what does that actually translate to?
Yeah, it's a really interesting mechanism they use. The Faubourg, of course, refers to their historic home base, Faubourg Saint-Honoré in Paris.
The heart of it all.
Right. The report calls it the beating heart of the house. It connects back to Émile Hermès' original vision. But they say this spirit isn't just in Paris. It's meant to be everywhere Hermès operates, infusing the sort of effervescence and joyful spirit.
So it's like grounding their global brand in that original sense of place and purpose,
Yeah.
heritage, but alive.
Exactly. It's not just looking back. It guides their creative output today across all their different crafts, their métier.
And you can see that in the products they launched in 2024.
Definitely. The report points to a few examples, like the Berenia perfumes that clearly links to their leather and equestrian roots, Hermès Beauty with Très d'Hermès focusing on the gaze, maybe suggesting that artistry and detail from the Faubourg.
Okay, I see the connection.
And then in leather goods, names like Haute de Croix en Sel or Della Cavalleria Elan, very equestrian. Arsan sounds a bit more architectural, perhaps. Even their high jewelry, shapes of color, you could imagine that drawing from the vibrant energy of Paris.
It really does sound like a thread running through everything, uniting different product lines, even their classic silk scarves. They keep reinventing them, right?
Oh, constantly. They mention new designs like Hermès flagship, Les Folies de Faubourg. You can imagine those capturing the store's energy, but also reissues like Arnais de Coeur, drawing from their archives.
Bringing back classics.
Yes, and reinterpreting icons like Brides de Gala. What really struck me was the scale they mention: over 50,000 product references.
50,000, wow.
Yeah, developed around this core identity, it just shows the sheer power of their creative engine while still keeping everything feeling Hermès.
It's easy to think of Hermes as this sort of unchanging monolith, timeless. But the report actually reminds us that evolution, strategic change, has been crucial for them.
Oh, absolutely. Going back to Jean-Louis Dumas in, 1978, there was a very conscious move to broaden what the house offered and where.
And it wasn't just random diversification.
Not at all. It was about integrating other companies with exceptional skills. That's savoir-faire. John Lobb for shoes, Prefercat silverware, St. Louis crystal.
Right, bringing that expertise in.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
having Pierre Hardy design their own shoe collection since the 90s really cemented their place there, too. These were strategic moves aligning craftsmanship.
And that annual theme tradition itself, starting back in '87 for the 150th anniversary, that feels quite forward-thinking, too. A way to keep things fresh.
It does. It seems like a way to inject new perspectives each year, but always connected back to their heritage. Keeps the brand dynamic. Keeps everyone engaged.
So let's talk more about that craftsmanship, the savoir-faire.
Huh.
It feels like the absolute bedrock of the company. The report really emphasizes it.
It does, and it backs it up. They're putting serious money into preserving and, importantly, transmitting these skills. They talk about building new leather workshops.
Creating jobs, too, right? Hundreds per site.
Yes, around 300 per site, and focusing on making them good places to work. It's not just about upping production, it's about nurturing the people doing the craft.
And they've even formalized it with the École Hermès de Savoir-Faire.
Right. Since 2021, it's a network of training schools offering actual qualifications in leatherwork, cutting, stitching, the core skills. They even have one for the sales teams, the École des Artisans de la Vente.
That shows a deep commitment, training expertise right across the board.
It's vital for them, isn't it? To maintain those incredibly high standards. It makes sure those unique skills don't just fade away, but are actively taught to the next generation.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. In today's world, you can't ignore sustainability. How does Hermès address this in the report? What's their approach?
Well, interestingly, they start by saying their operations are naturally a low emitter of greenhouse gases.
Which sounds good, but
But they don't stop there. They acknowledge they need to actively work on reducing their impact further. They've set some pretty ambitious targets, actually, aligned with that 1.5 degrees C pathway validated by SBTi.
okay, so that's the Science-Based Targets Initiative. That signals they're serious.
It does. They're not just leaning on being naturally low. They're looking across the whole value chain.
So manufacturing, logistics, stores, suppliers, everything.
Pretty much. They mention energy efficiency, moving to renewables. They talk about responsible manufacturing, using sustainable materials, being frugal with resources, thinking about the circular economy. The goal is a real reduction in their carbon footprint.
And it's more than just carbon, right? What about other resources like water, especially for things like tanneries?
Yes, water is a big focus. They have a specific target to reduce their industrial water use intensity year on year. They're upgrading wastewater treatment plants, even looking at water reuse projects, especially in tanneries.
That seems critical.
And they're also collaborating externally, working with WWF France, with universities in Mongolia and China to study the sustainability of cashmere and silk supply chains.
Going right to the source.
Exactly. And they mention a target for Leather Working Group certification, LWG, for 70% of their leather suppliers by the end of 2024. That's a big push for responsible sourcing in a key area for them.
That LWG certification is becoming quite standard, isn't it? And I saw something about zero waste in jewelry.
Yes, a fascinating detail. In 2024, they rolled out a global recycling program for gold, palladium, and silver across different product lines, trying to manage the life cycle of those precious metals better. It's quite a holistic view.
Okay, Hermès is obviously a global powerhouse. What does the report tell us about their footprint and where they're expanding?
Well, it doesn't give specific sales breakdowns by region in the bit we have, but their store opening activity tells a story.
Where were they focusing in 2024?
A lot of activity in mainland China, 4 new stores mentioned. Also, a second store in Mumbai, India, and 2 more in Japan, including a major one in Tokyo's Azabudai Hills.
So a definite focus on key Asian markets. Significant investment there.
Seems like it. Signals where they see growth potential.
Right.
But it's not just about new stores. They're also doing these more experiential things.
Like what?
The traveling Le Monde Mez kiosk, it was in Barcelona, London, Athens, and the Hermès in the Making program, which visited Zurich. Ways to connect directly with people, show the craftsmanship, build that deeper engagement globally.
Makes sense. For a company built on individual craft, how they treat their employees must be crucial.
What does the report say about social responsibility, their people?
They have this internal idea, all artisans is sustainable development, trying to get everyone involved in their bigger goals. They were even training their top leadership, the supervisory board, on environmental issues.
Commitment from the top.
Right. And they mentioned the Hermès Here's employee survey leading to local action plans, suggests they're trying to listen and respond. So fostering a positive environment.
It seems so. They highlight agreements signed in France about supporting employees at different life stages, plus a group disability agreement. And there's the H-Alert system.
What's that?
It's their whistleblowing system, a way for employees to report ethical concerns, human rights issues, that kind of thing. Reinforces accountability.
Okay.
They also state they prefer operating in countries with low human rights risks and rely on HR and employee reps to uphold standards. Oh, and a huge chunk of the workforce, 73% globally, holds shares or rights through ownership plans.
That's a high percentage. Suggests a sense of shared ownership, literally.
It really does.
Okay, let's touch on governance. How is the company actually structured and overseen?
It's a bit unique. Hermès International has what they call an active partner, Emile Hermès SS, which sounds like it has a significant operational role alongside the limited partner, the shareholders. Then there's a supervisory board providing oversight.
And specific committees for things like ethics.
Yes, there's a CAG CSR committee that specifically looks at social policy, non-discrimination, diversity, even how CSR links to executive pay.
So checks and balances are built in.
Seems that way. They also emphasize ethics training, ethics integrity, and anti-corruption for all sales staff, updated in 2024, and a compliance and vigilance committee. They talk about a demanding ethics culture and zero tolerance for probity breaches, regular risk mapping, internal controls, the standard but seemingly robust stuff.
And ultimately, how did all this translate financially in 2024? What are the headline numbers?
Pretty strong, as Dumas suggested up front. Consolidated revenue hit $15.2 billion. That's up 15% at constant exchange rates.
15% growth, that's very healthy.
Very. Their gross margin stayed high at 70%. Operating income was $6,150 million, and net income landed at $4,631 million. So yeah, the model seems to be working very well financially.
Okay, one last area of philanthropy. They have the Fondation d'Entreprise Hermès. What's its focus?
It's interesting they emphasize an operational approach. They run their own programs mostly, rather than just handing out grants.
Ah, more hands-on.
Exactly. Focused on 4 main areas.
Yeah.
Supporting new art creation, transmitting skills, mirroring their internal focus, you see.
Yes, the savoir-faire again.
Right. Then protecting biodiversity and solidarity initiatives. The goal seems to be direct, targeted impact on the ground.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. Our deep dive into Hermès in 2024. It shows a company performing strongly, really driven by those core values we talked about.
Definitely.
Creativity is clearly thriving, channeled by that spirit of the Faubourg theme. There's this deep, deep investment in craftsmanship and an increasingly serious, broad approach to sustainability and looking after their people.
All within that unique governance structure and while still expanding strategically around the world.
It's quite a mix. Tradition, innovation, ethics, profit, all seemingly working together.
It's a compelling picture, for sure, how they balance it all.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you listening. When you consider how Hermès manages to blend its deep heritage with being so relevant today, what do you think is the absolute key ingredient for a luxury brand to actually last for generations?
That's a good question. Or maybe looking at this whole ecosystem, the craft, the creativity, the ethics, the financials, what lessons, perhaps unexpected ones, could other industries, maybe even outside luxury, learn from how Hermès builds value that truly endures?
Something to ponder. It's certainly a fascinating combination of factors.